Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a fascinating turn, focusing on a single, really powerful narrative.
We are.
It's the calling of Jesus's first core followers, so Peter, James, and John, as it's detailed in Luke chapter 5.
And this is so much more than just a simple recruitment story. Our mission today is to really unpack the dynamic at play here.
What kind of dynamic are we talking about?
Well, it's this friction between human expertise, professional logic, and then the practical realities of a situation. And finally, this radical, almost absolute nature of obedience when you're confronted by something completely unexpected.
And the scene is set perfectly for drama, isn't it?
Right.
It all happens at the Lake of Gennesaret.
Right. And our sources emphasize something important here. People often call it the Sea of Galilee or Tiberias. And it sounds very grand, but it is functionally a massive freshwater lake.
And its scale matters. It sets the stage for what's about to happen with these huge crowds.
Exactly. You have to imagine this massive, completely impromptu gathering right on the shore. The immediate context is just the pressure of sheer popularity. Huge crowds were gathering, we're told, pressing in on Jesus.
What really stands out to me in the sources, though, is the reason for the crowd. I mean, they weren't there because of some modern, well-funded campaign. There was no advertising blitz, no promises of, free food or anything.
Nothing like that. They were there for one reason. They were intensely eager to hear God's word.
That intensity is the surprising part.
It really is. It points to this deep spiritual curiosity. They were drawn by an authority in his teaching and maybe some of the signs they'd seen that was just totally different from the predictable, often dry instruction they were used to.
From the local religious leaders, the scribes and Pharisees.
Right. It signals a genuine, a grassroots movement. It's driven purely by this hunger for truth.
So, okay, we have the problem. A massive, eager crowd pressing in, and the teacher Jesus is basically trapped on the shore.
He needs separation.
And elevation. And he needs it fast.
It's a classic logistical challenge. How do you address hundreds, maybe thousands of people at once without being physically overwhelmed and making sure the people at the back can still hear you?
Okay, let's unpack his solution because it's just brilliant in its simplicity.
It is.
Instead of, building a stage or something, he just appropriates the nearest available resource. A boat.
And it belongs to Simon, the fisherman, who of course we all know better as Peter.
He essentially turns a fishing vessel into a floating pulpit.
That's a great way to put it. He asks Simon to push the boat out a little way from the shore, and this one simple move solves everything.
It gives him that natural separation from the crowd.
And crucially, that slightly elevated position on the water means his voice would carry naturally over the surface and back toward the beach. It's the perfect acoustic setup, completely improvised.
The sources even mention a subtle but really important detail about his posture. After pushing off, Jesus sat down to teach.
Which is noteworthy.
Very. Because sitting was the traditional posture of an authoritative rabbi, a teacher. It didn't diminish his authority at all. If anything, it solidified it. It projects this calm and command right in the middle of all this chaos.
It's a very practical move that underlines his purpose too. He was there to teach, not to perform.
And speaking of Simon, we need to picture him clearly.
Yes. He wasn't some teenager with a rod and reel. The sources paint a picture of a really established local professional.
He was married, he had a mother-in-law mentioned elsewhere, and he was a highly seasoned fisherman. This was his established life.
It was his legacy, his source of wealth. And he and his partners, James and John, they weren't just lounging around. The text says they were washing their nets.
Which tells you everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
They were finishing their shift, they were tired, and probably pretty frustrated after a long night of total failure.
Absolutely. Cleaning the nets is the final back-breaking chore after a night's work. It signifies the end of the effort and the beginning of rest.
And they had nothing, literally nothing to show for it. Their professional, rational methods had completely failed them.
Which brings us to the core conflict.
Right, so this is where it gets really, really interesting. Jesus finishes teaching the crowds, and then he turns his attention not to the thousands of people, but back to this one exhausted, frustrated professional, Simon.
And he issues a command that it defies all logic. He says, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch."
And this is the whole conflict of the narrative right here.
It is. Simon was an expert in his field. Fishermen on the Sea of Galilee, they often relied on these proven highly technical method.
Like fishing at night, right?
Exactly. Often using torches or lights to attract the fish, a technique sometimes called curved light fishing. They knew the seasons, the currents, the best times.
And Simon's response is just the perfect voice of professional exasperation. He says, "Teacher, we have toiled all night and caught nothing."
He's essentially saying, look, with all due respect, sir, we, the experts, have already used the best techniques and failed. Now you, a carpenter, are telling us to go back out in broad daylight using the exact same methods that just failed.
The irony is just overwhelming.
It really is. Imagine a CEO trying to give detailed operational advice to a leading heart surgeon in the middle of an operation. The sources highlight that Jesus was trained in his father's trade carpentry.
So for a carpenter to instruct a fisherman on the precise timing and location for a catch is, professionally speaking, almost insulting.
It really is. It challenges Simon's entire identity, his whole expertise.
It also highlights the finite limits of human effort, no matter how skilled you are. Peter's rational effort, his expertise, his logic, it all resulted in zero.
He hit the wall. He hit that limitation. And we see this everywhere today, even with our, hyper-sophisticated planning.
That's a good point. We look at modern expert planning, and you realize just how fragile human success can be.
That's right. I mean, think of large-scale infrastructure projects. Or our sources reference the tourism industry in Hawaii and Taiwan.
Oh.
Years of expert assessment, massive investment in hotels, infrastructure, all built on these predictable models of success. And then...
unforeseen circumstances.
Exactly. A global pandemic or sharp shifts in regional politics, and that entire industry can be just decimated overnight.
Man plans, but heaven decides. That's the old saying.
It's precisely the position Peter was in. He had exhausted all his professional wisdom, and all it got him was empty nets and exhaustion.
And this professional failure is the necessary setup, isn't it, for the radical act of obedience that comes next?
It's everything. Simon's pivot is it's the whole story. He doesn't argue anymore about logic or sunlight or anything. He just says, nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net.
That one phrase, it bridges the gap between the finite, failed logic of man and the infinite power of the command.
It's not an action based on hope or a good feeling. It's pure submission, based only on the authority of the speaker, despite all his own logical resistance.
And the result of that single act of trust was instantaneous and overwhelming.
Completely. The sources say the catch was so immense that the nets actually began to break.
And Peter's boat started taking on water.
Yeah.
It was a miracle of such abundance that it immediately created a whole new logistical challenge.
It was too much for one boat to handle, which brings in the dynamic of the second boat. This part is crucial because it shows how one act of obedience can just ripple out and impact everyone else.
So Peter's boat was the one that got the direct instruction.
Right. It acted on the promise. It represents that immediate, overflowing fruit of listening to Jesus' word. But the scale of the blessing, it required reinforcements.
The boat belonging to his partners, James and John.
Exactly. They were called over to help because Peter's boat was literally sinking under the weight of the catch.
And what's critical here is that Jesus had not given James and John the promise to cast their nets.
That's a key detail. They were partners, yes, but they hadn't heard the instruction. Only Peter had.
So the connection here is really profound. Peter's radical obedience in that first boat created this demonstrable, undeniable witness.
A massive physical reality.
Exactly. A reality that immediately involved the second boat. They didn't need a command from Jesus. They just needed to witness the impossible result.
And you have to think about where James and John were mentally.
Oh, they were done.
Yeah.
They were tired. They were in the middle of cleaning their gear, which is a meticulous, time-consuming job.
It's the ancient equivalent of finally finishing a 20-hour work shift, wiping down your station, putting your feet up, and then the phone rings.
And someone says, get back in here immediately. We have an unprecedented, career-defining emergency.
That's it. They had just physically paid the price for their failure, and now they were being asked to physically pay the price for someone else's shocking success.
Yet they came, and quickly.
Yeah.
They had seen the miracle, and they were just compelled to participate.
And the conclusion is that the abundance was so great that both boats were filled, straining under the weight, almost sinking, loaded with impossible wealth.
Now, what's so fascinating is Simon Peter's reaction after the miracle. This is the real pivot point.
It really is. He didn't focus on the massive profits he was about to make. He didn't start calculating his market share or, ask Jesus to formalize a business arrangement.
Right, no, hey, you tell me where to fish and we split the profits.
None of that. His response was immediate, almost like spiritual trauma, a kind of horror.
Seeing this divine power show up in the most mundane, professional part of his life, the very thing he thought he controlled, it just made him realize his own inadequacy.
He wasn't overwhelmed by the gold, he was overwhelmed by the presence of holiness. His response was this raw recognition of his own unworthiness, his finiteness. He says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord."
The miracle didn't make him feel rich. It made him aware of God.
And Jesus responds, not by confirming his sin, but with immediate reassurance, "Do not be afraid." And then comes the new commission.
From now on, you will catch men.
A complete, radical transition of focus. The job changes from striving for livelihood and physical wealth and daily toil to the eternal mission of gaining people for the kingdom.
Which leads to the ultimate radical decision.
Yes, all three of them, Peter, James, and John, they make a choice that defies all basic economic sense. They forsook all and followed him, and we just cannot understate the cost here.
They didn't just walk away from a small hobby. This was their established professional careers, their family's income streams, their property.
A boat to a fisherman was capital. It was their livelihood, their investment, their retirement plan.
And they left it at the absolute height of their success. They didn't leave when the nets were empty and they were poor.
That's the key. They left after their nets were miraculously overflowing. The true challenge wasn't leaving the toil, it was leaving the guaranteed, secured wealth that was literally sinking their boats.
They abandoned their entire life infrastructure to follow a promise.
And this foundational shared experience of the lake miracle, it cemented their bond. They became the foundational three, the inner circle, so often seen closest to Jesus. It suggests this radical shared moment of failure, divine command, and costly obedience was just crucial to their later roles.
It taught them immediately that divine resources and the divine calling just completely outweighed even the most staggering human success.
It certainly did.
So, what does this all mean for us then? This deep dive really shows a critical path, doesn't it? From relying on our own professional strengths and planning and limited logic, to trusting an authoritative word that just defies all of our experience. The transformation is from being defined by our tireless and often fruitless toil to being defined by a radical, abundant spiritual calling.
And this raises a really important question. The disciples, they chose to leave their boats, their entire infrastructure, and walk away from a miraculous, lucrative catch after it was secured. We often focus on the power of the miracle, but the ultimate defining challenge was that decision to walk away from success, from security, from comfort.
That's a powerful thought.
So the question to think about is, what existing success, comfort, or finite plan might we, in our own lives, be asked to set aside to pursue a path defined purely by a higher promise? That is certainly something to mull over until our next deep dive.